The auctioneer laughed. He didn't try to hide it. He simply turned his face away, covered his mouth with his fist, and laughed. And the other men around him laughed, too. That kind of low chuckle that doesn't need a loud sound to cut deep. Maya Thompson was 18. So was Leah Thompson. They were standing in the middle of a dirt parking lot in Harlow County, Texas, with the 3 o'clock Sunday beating down on the back of their necks and $10 in cash in their hands. The last bills they had in the world. Lot number 34 was on the screen behind the auctioneer. An aerial photo. Dry, rocky land with a structure that had once been a house and was now a rotting wooden shell with a collapsed roof. No one had bid. No one wanted it. No one except a voice from the back of the audience. $10. It was Leah who spoke. Quietly, directly, without trembling. The auctioneer looked, and Derek King, sitting in the front row with his boots crossed and the brim of his hat pulled low, turned his whole body in his chair to see where that voice had come from. What he saw were 2 young black girls, identical, with backpacks on their backs and clothes that had seen better days. He smiled slowly. Lot 34, said the auctioneer, his hammer already rising. Sold for $10. No one bid against it. Why would they? That plot of land was worthless. That's what everyone thought. What no one understood at that moment was why Derek King had stopped smiling so abruptly when the hammer fell. He stood up without saying a word. He walked past the twins without looking, but before getting into his truck, he stopped. He stood with his back turned for 2-3 seconds, and then he drove off. Maya saw that. She remembered it. The 2 of them had slept the previous week in a municipal shelter 40 kilometers away, then on a park bench, then in a woman's car who needed the vehicle back. Their grandmother, Ruth Thompson, had died 6 weeks earlier. A massive heart attack, one Tuesday morning, without warning. Ruth was the only family they had. With her, the apartment was gone too. The lease was in her name, the bills in her name, everything in her name. The twins woke up in a world where they no longer had anything that belonged to them. Except now this lot. Leah looked at the paper the auctioneer had placed in her hand. Coordinates. A rural address. She looked at Maya. It's ours, she said. Maya didn't answer right away. She was still staring at the dust that Derek King's truck had kicked up as it drove off. Why did he want this? She said. More to herself than to her sister. Leah didn't know how to answer. Neither of them did, but the question hung there, suspended between them as they walked toward the inner-city bus, because they needed to get to that property before dark. What was in the aerial photo was even worse in person. The house, if it even deserved that name, had a roof on one side that had completely caved in. The wooden walls had leaned inward as if trying to embrace each other before falling. The front door had no hinges and was leaning against the side of the doorway. Inside, the floor was half dirt, half rotten planks. It smelled of old dampness and of animals that had used it as shelter for years. Leah stood in the doorway for a long moment. Maya had already gone inside. They divided up what needed to be done without needing to discuss it. It had been like this since they were children. One would start a sentence and the other would finish it. Not because they were alike, but because they had learned to complement each other. Maya went to examine the supporting structure, tapping the beams with her knuckles, testing where the wood still held. Leah went to take inventory of what was there. A broken window in the back, a rusty wood burning stove, a bent metal shelf, and in the corner opposite the entrance, a pile of things covered by a green plastic tarp that the wind hadn't blown away by sheer miracle. They lifted the tarp together. Tools. Old. Rusty, but tools. A hoe. 2 hammers. A saw with a broken handle. Nails inside a coffee concealed with tape. And underneath it all, folded in 4, a map drawn by hand in pencil, without a ruler, but carefully, indicating where the land ended, where there was groundwater, where the ground was firmer. Maya looked at the map for a long while. Someone really knew this place, she said. Who had left it there, and why, was a question neither of them could answer yet. They slept that first night inside what was left of the house, with their backpacks serving as pillows and the tarps spread out on the firmest ground they could find. The temperature dropped more than they'd expected. Leah lay awake staring at the torn ceiling. Through the hole, she could see the stars. She thought of her grandmother. Ruth woke up at 5 every morning and made coffee before anything else. She never explained why. She just did. And the smell of that coffee had been the first thing in Leah's life for years, until it wasn't anymore. She took a deep breath. She didn't let the tears fall, because she knew that if she did, she wouldn't be able to stop. And in the morning, she needed to be on her feet. The next morning, before the sun got too hot, Maya was already outside with the hoe. She had marked the perimeter of where she planned to start, outlined on the ground with stones. Leah looked at that improvised outline in the dirt and tried to understand what her sister was seeing, because Maya was clearly seeing something that didn't exist yet. "What are you building?" Leah asked. Maya pointed. She spoke for 2 minutes. Leah listened in silence. When Maya finished, Leah stared at the stones on the ground, at the map, at the tools, at her sister. "That's impossible," she said. "Everything we've done so far was impossible," Maya replied, and went back to work. It was on the third day that Derek King showed up for the first time. He pulled the truck over to the side of the dirt road leading to the lot. He didn't get out. He sat there with his arm resting on the open window, watching. The twins were tearing down what was left of a sidewall beyond repair. They didn't stop. They didn't look at him. He stayed for about 10 minutes. He left. He returned 2 days later and stayed longer. On the 7th day, he got out of the truck. Derek King was 53 years old, 6'3", and had the kind of presence that filled a room before he even entered it. In Harlow County, he was the largest private landowner, 3 farms, a grain transport company, and a stake in 2 grain silos. People in town spoke his name with a certain caution. Not exactly fear, but that respect that comes from knowing the man can make someone's life difficult if he wants to. He walked across the property as if it were already his. "I'll be blunt," he said, standing 3 meters from Maya while Leah was outside hauling debris. "This land is worth more than $10. You know that." Maya stuck the shovel into the ground and looked at him. "Then why didn't anyone offer more?" He ignored the question. He pulled an envelope from his back pocket and placed it on the broken window that served as a makeshift countertop. $2,000 cash. "You take it today and leave." Maya didn't touch the envelope. "It's not for sale." Derek looked at her for a long moment, then at Leah, who had stopped and was listening. Then back at Maya. "Everything has a price," he said. "Then offer one I'll accept," she replied. He took the envelope back. He left without another word. And it was at that moment, watching Derek's broad back walk out through the doorway with no hinges, that Leah felt something that wasn't just suspicion. It was recognition, as if that scene echoed something she couldn't quite grasp yet. The answer began to emerge 3 days later, in a place neither of them expected. Leah was clearing away what was left of the floor in one of the inner rooms, boards that needed to be removed to make way for new flooring, when the shovel struck something different. Not dirt, not wood, something more solid, more uniform. She brushed it with her hand. It was a metal box, small, rusted at the edges, with a latch that time had welded shut. She whistled for Maya. They carried the box outside into the sun. Maya used one of the thick nails as a lever until the lid gave way with a sharp snap. Inside were 3 things: a black and white photograph, a folded document with a stamped edge, and a handwritten letter on yellowed paper. Maya picked up the letter. The name on the envelope left them both frozen. It wasn't addressed to them. It was addressed to Ruth Thompson, their grandmother. Leah stared at those 3 words as if they had altered the gravity of the place where she stood. The letter had been written to their grandmother, and it had been buried on that land that no one wanted, that they had bought for $10. Maya opened the letter carefully. She read it in silence once, then twice. When she looked up, Leah saw something on her sister's face she had never seen before. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't anger. It was something in between. That emotion that has no real name, because it only happens when you discover that the world was unfair to someone you loved, even before you were born. "We need to find someone," Maya said, carefully putting the letter away. "A woman who knew Grandma Ruth here, before we existed." Leah didn't ask how Maya knew that. The name was in the letter. Dorothy Hayes. Dorothy Hayes was 78 years old and lived 11 kilometers away, in a small exposed brick house on an unnamed road that appeared only on old county maps. Leah had found the address at the county clerk's office after 2 hours of sifting through physical records that no one had consulted in decades. Dorothy was listed as a witness on 3 property transfer documents dated 1987. Her name appeared next to that of a Ruth Mae Thompson. When the twins arrived, Dorothy was on the porch. She saw them coming down the dirt road. She didn't get up. She didn't say anything. She just stared with the calmness of someone who had waited a long time for something and simply stopped counting the days. "Whose daughters are you?" she said before any introductions. "Granddaughters," Leah replied. "Ruth Thompson's." Dorothy closed her eyes. She opened them again. She gestured with her head toward the chairs beside her. What she told them took 40 minutes. Not a single word wasted. In 1987, Ruth Thompson had bought that lot with savings from 12 years of work as a nurse. She paid in cash. She had plans to build with her husband, plant, raise her children there. She had started. She had even left tools and materials hidden away for a second phase of construction. But a fire destroyed what she had built before the deadline of a contractual clause requiring residential construction within 36 months, or the lot would revert to the municipality. Ruth tried to rebuild. Then came the obstacles. Permits denied for vague reasons. Documents that vanished before being signed. Deadlines that expired because the paperwork never arrived. The lot reverted to the municipality. Ruth appealed. She appealed again. She lost again. And at a time when she had also lost her husband and had young daughters to support, she simply didn't have the strength left to keep fighting. She kept everything, Dorothy said. The documents, the evidence, the letter she wrote to herself for the day some Thompson came back. She said it was going to happen. She just didn't know when. Maya placed the letter and the document on the table between them. Dorothy stared at them for a long moment. When she looked up, her eyes were brimming with tears, but she didn't let them fall. "Did she know it would be us?" Leah asked. "She knew it would be someone in the family," Dorothy replied. That was all it needed to be. The document Ruth had kept was a certified copy of the original purchase contract, with handwritten notes on the back, dates, names, irregularities she had documented during the appeals. It wasn't direct proof of fraud, but it was evidence of a pattern. A competent lawyer would know what to do with it. What Derek King wanted with that land was no longer a mystery. He had tried to buy it in 2019, in 2021, and again in 2023. Maya had found the records of canceled bids at the county clerk's office while Leah was looking for Dorothy. In every case, the municipality had rejected the bids for reasons never fully explained. The lot remained stuck in legal limbo until that month's debt settlement auction, where it appeared listed for a nominal amount because no one else knew what to do with it. And then 2 18-year-old girls had bid $10. The turnaround came on a Monday morning, 4 weeks later. A sheriff's deputy showed up at the property with a summons. Derek King had filed a lawsuit claiming the auction sale was invalid, a procedural defect in the publication of the notice, with a notice period shorter than the legal minimum. The argument was technical but potentially sound. If the judge accepted it, the sale would be annulled, the lot would revert to the municipality, and Derek already had a lawyer ready to file a direct purchase offer before the proceedings concluded. Leah read the notice 3 times. "Maya, read it once." "How much time do we have?" Maya asked the deputy. "Hearing in 30 days. The officer left. The two stood still in the middle of the lot. Around them, the foundations of what they were building already dug out, the support posts driven in, part of the structure erected. 30 days. Leah looked at her sister. "What now?" Maya tucked the notice into her pants pocket. She picked up the hammer lying on the ground. "Now we work faster." The lawyer's name was Nathan Cruz, 38 years old, a small office in Fort Worth, specializing in rural property law, a niche few in the region had. Dorothy Hayes had given his name. He was the one who had tried to help Ruth Thompson with her final appeals years ago, when he was still an intern. He remembered the case. When Maya called and explained what they had found, Nathan was silent for about 5 seconds. "Send photos of everything," he said. Today. What Nathan identified in the documents was not merely evidence of administrative irregularities. In legal terms, there was evidence that the rezoning of the lot in 1987 had been based on a flawed process. The filing dates on the building permits were inconsistent with the physical files he had accessed in the city's archives. Someone had altered the dates. It wasn't interpretation. It was a direct comparison of documents. This didn't negate the need to respond to Derek's lawsuit, but it created a much broader defense, and a potential counterclaim that called into question the very legitimacy of the lot remaining municipal property for 4 decades. At the hearing, 32 days after the notice, the judge heard both sides. Derek King sat on the opposite side of the room in a suit, flanked by 2 lawyers. He didn't look at the twins once during the entire session. Nathan presented the defense in 40 minutes, the original documents, Ruth's letter, the comparative analysis of the dates, 3 expert reports, 2 from document specialists, 1 from a historian of Texas land records. The judge read. He asked questions. He asked for 10 days to deliberate. During those 10 days, the twins didn't stop building. The decision came on a Wednesday afternoon. Nathan called Maya. She was atop a wooden structure, hammer in hand, with Leah below holding a beam. Derek's lawsuit was dismissed. The sale was valid, and the judge had opened an official investigation into the irregularities from 1987. Maya stood there for a moment. The sun was setting on the Texas horizon of earth and stone. Leah shouted from below, asking what had happened. Maya climbed down. She set the hammer on the ground. She looked at her sister, and then it came. What Leah had held back that first night on the dirt floor beneath the stars, when she hadn't let the tears fall because she needed to be on her feet. It came now, without warning, without ceremony. The 2 of them embraced in the middle of their grandmother's land, which was truly theirs now, as the sun set slowly and the wind moved quietly through the beams they had raised themselves. Weeks later, a journalist from Austin who covered rural property law and the history of land discrimination in Texas published a story. Dorothy Hayes had sent a handwritten letter to his newsroom without telling anyone. The story spread across the state, then across the country. What the twins had built was not just a house. It was a small, functional community center, offering literacy classes for adults and children in one of the most underserved rural corners of the county. Maya had designed it herself, by hand, based on the map they found under the tarp, which turned out to be Ruth Thompson's own original sketch of what she had once dreamed of building there. The granddaughter had finished what her grandmother started. Donations poured in. A rural education fund offered partnership. A construction company volunteered to expand the facility at no cost. A university in Fort Worth contacted Maya about an architecture scholarship. Derek King's name appeared in the judicial investigation, not as a direct perpetrator, but as an indirect beneficiary of a chain of land speculation made possible by what had been done to Ruth in 1987. On a Saturday afternoon 3 months after the auction, Maya and Leah opened the center's doors for the first time. Dorothy Hayes sat in the front row, hands folded in her lap. When the first people walked in, she closed her eyes for just a moment. When she opened them, she looked like a woman who had finally set down something very heavy. Ruth Thompson had saved for 12 years, built with her own hands, and lost everything to a system that was never designed to be fair to her. 40 years later, her granddaughters came back with $10, homeless, with nothing, and built what she never could. The auctioneer had laughed. He didn't know he was watching a story that was already halfway finished.